Hello and welcome to News. I'm your host, and today we will be talking about the impact of the Chernobyl disaster. But first, the weather. The weather today is hot, humid, and threatening to rain, but there's a nice breeze to even it all out. Now back to me in the studio. For my project, I chose to answer a question about my favorite part of the Cold War. Today I am answering the question, what is the impact of the Chernobyl disaster? In order to answer this question, we must answer the following questions. What was the Chernobyl disaster? What were the immediate impacts of the disaster? What have been long-term impacts of the disaster? And what is the disaster's role in, and how has it been impacted by, the war in Ukraine? The Chernobyl disaster was a nuclear meltdown on April 26, 1986, that took place in Pripyat, a city in Ukraine near the Belarusian border. The Chernobyl nuclear power plant used RBMK fission reactors. These are cheap and unsafe Soviet nuclear reactors. The meltdown was caused by a failed safety test. In order to perform the test, the power output of reactor 4 was reduced on April 25, 1986. The test was delayed, and the output was not increased. Around midnight on the 26th of April, the power output of the reactor dropped below the safe minimum. In order to increase output, the crew removed all the control rods from the reactor. Sometime around 1:20 a.m., the output of the reactor shot up. To slow the reactor, the crew pressed the AZ5 or scram button, which reinserts all of the control rods. What the crew didn't know, and the government hid, is that the control rods have graphite tips, which overheated the reactor when they were reinserted. At 1:23 a.m., the reactor overheated, catching the graphite in the reactor on fire and causing the lid of reactor number 4 to fly off, damaging the roof of the reactor building. Immediate impacts of the Chernobyl disaster include radioactive contamination being spread across Europe, the establishment of the exclusion zone, the process of liquidation, and a concrete sarcophagus being built around the damaged reactor. A large amount of radioactive particles were spread across Europe as a result of the reactor. Belarus had the worst contamination of the Soviet Union, receiving about 60% of the contamination of the whole USSR. In order to prevent the contamination from getting worse and to protect the citizens of Pripyat, an exclusion zone was established. The exclusion zone was originally a radius of 32 kilometers squared, but was later expanded to approximately 2,600 kilometers squared. Liquidation was the process of decontaminating the exclusion zone. Decontamination efforts included removing rubble from the roof of the reactor 4, destroying crops, and killing animals. Once the graphite fire was out and the risk of more damage to the reactor was minimized, a concrete sarcophagus was built around the reactor as a temporary measure to protect it from the elements. Long-term impacts of the Chernobyl disaster include an increase in cancer and birth defects, the need for a new sarcophagus, and an impact on entertainment. In workers who helped to clean up the disaster, there is a higher risk of leukemia, cataracts, and cardiovascular diseases. In children, thyroid cancer, stunted growth, and immune disorders are common, as well as a 200% increase in the rate of birth defects in the Chernobyl fallout area. As concrete does not last forever, and the original sarcophagus was meant to be temporary, the need arose for a new enclosure of reactor 4. The construction of the new safe confinement was from 2010 to 2017. The new safe confinement is one of the largest movable structures in the world and serves to protect the damaged reactor and allow for partial deconstruction of the existing sarcophagus. Another long-term impact Chernobyl has had is on entertainment. One impact on entertainment is the existence and popularity of tourism in the exclusion zone. Another impact Chernobyl has had on entertainment is the many documentaries, video games, and memes about the disaster. Early into the war in Ukraine, there was a Russian occupation of the Chernobyl exclusion zone when it was captured by Russian troops on February 24, 2022. Around 300 people, including workers and guards, were trapped in the power plant during the occupation. Early in the occupation, there were concerns about Chernobyl having enough energy to sufficiently cool the remaining reactors. By March 31st, it was reported that most of the Russian troops had withdrawn from the exclusion zone. During the capture and occupation of the exclusion zone, the Russian troops had disturbed the ground and kicked up radioactive particles. There have been some reports and rumors that some of the troops were suffering from acute radiation sickness. Today we have talked about the Chernobyl disaster, what impacts it has had, and the power plant's role in the war in Ukraine. If the Chernobyl disaster is interesting to you and you would like to learn more, I would recommend watching the HBO docu-series Chernobyl. This has been News. Thank you for watching, and I hope you have enjoyed.